Hello everybody, this is Brian Ehlert, Product Management Engineer with NGINX on the NGINX Controller team. And today I'm going to talk about the Ansible roles for NGINX Controller. And we're going to walk through some scenarios where we are moving configurations through Ansible Controller as well as machine lifecycle that's valuable for you to use with NGINX Controller. First of all, the collection is what I'm going to be talking about, and you can find the collection in Galaxy. You can find the collection over in Ansible Automation Hub, but this is a collection of roles built around NGINX Controller. It includes the NGINX role, so the one to modify and manage the data plane component, as well as roles to manage NGINX Controller itself. So the installation role, licensing, generating ephemeral API token, managing the agent, certificate management, gateway management, component management. Also, you can work right into your workflows very quickly and easily through Ansible, managing your configurations through NGINX Controller. During this, I'm going to be talking about some examples. You can find those in this repository. Ansible Tower NGINX Controller examples. It's also referenced in the blog, but the sample configurations that I'm going to be referring to are in here. So there's the establishing the credential type in controller for NGINX Controller. There's the gateway configuration. There's deploying the gateway instances. So you've got all the samples, all the playbooks that I'm using here. The certificate that we're going to be using in the environment, as well as the configurations for the application and components that we're going to be using in controller itself. Now, the sample that I want to set up, within NGINX Controller, we've got this business called Acme Financial. Acme Financial has been working on an application for a while, and they have a couple instances set up. It's in their development environment. So as you can see here, it's the lending development environment. And we actually want to establish an application in a new environment, and we want to move this into production into AWS for our customer. And we actually want to use Ansible Tower to do that in this particular scenario. Now, before I go any further, the examples that I have built, I'm using Ansible Tower here, but these will work with regular Ansible just fine. Just make sure you pass your extra variables on through the command line and you'll be just fine. You don't have to use Ansible Tower. I'm just taking advantage of some capabilities of Ansible Tower to make my life a little simpler in this case. So as we go around controller, as we look here, I've got this new environment. It's production US East, and this is going to be in the US East data center in AWS. Currently, there's no applications, there's no certificates, there's no ingress gateways that are configured in this environment. It's totally empty because we're going to take that development environment and move it on over. But before we can do that, we have to establish a few things in Ansible Tower. So one of the very first things that I needed to establish was a credential type for NGINX Controller. Now I have a sample on how to establish a credential for NGINX Controller. So you can copy and paste these in, but really it's this input configuration and the injector configuration that gets the variables back out. So the really important pieces are the FQDN, the email, and the password. And we're going to be making some enhancements to this over time, but to get you started, you'll need to start with these particular things. So after you establish the new credential type for NGINX Controller, you actually need to establish a credential. So if we look at the particular one that I have in AWS right now, you can see that I've got my user email, I've got my password set up, and I've got the DNS that's set for my NGINX Controller instance. That's all we need. Ansible Tower will pass those through using the correct substitutions for extra vars based on the credential type definition and use those through the roles as we pass on through. Now, we're going to set up a workflow here that's going to add a few things into our environment. So I have some templates that add new instances into AWS. They update my inventory, they install NGINX Plus, and they install the controller agent alongside NGINX Plus. Now I've built those into a workflow, combined them in an ordered chain, so that I can build things out And one of the things that I'm going to be doing that I'll mention is I use inventories, cloud-based inventories, with a special tag so that we can migrate on through this process. But I'm going to go ahead and launch it so that we can get started. I'm going to say give me 2 instances in US East 2. We're going to put this in production East. The location name in NGINX Controller is going to be unspecified because I don't want to list a location at this point in time. The security group, I want to attach the image ID, the key name, and the load balancer subnet. So my playbook's going to accept all that, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to instantiate those machines for me. While that's working, let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening. So the repository that I had mentioned with all my samples in it, I'm looking at here in Visual Studio Code. So we want to look at the controller gateway instances in this point in time. One pattern that you're going to see is I have a requirements file that's actually set up, and this is referring to the collection from Galaxy, or it could be from Automation Hub if you've got Automation Hub set up. But to be sure to bring down the NGINX Controller collection from the NGINX Incorporated namespace. So after that, I'll just be referring to and reusing those. This helps with Tower because it just pulls those into that ephemeral run space. I don't have to worry about install, roll, and all that kind of fun stuff. So that takes care of it for me. So the instantiating the instances, it's a pretty simple playbook. We're going to create the load balancing machine instances. I'm going to add one key tag to that, which is the new gateway key. So instead of doing a key value, I'm doing just a key, new underscore gateway. I'm going to add 2 of them. I'm going to rename them, put the name tag back in there. I want to wait for SSH to come up. That's a little faster than waiting for them to totally go. After that, we are going to update the inventory. So let me go ahead and let's take a peek at that. So while this is running, this will notify me when it gets to the point where it really matters. But the inventory that I'm using is a cloud-based inventory, and I have it set up with a few different filters, and that's so I can get some groupings here. In this case, we're going to be using this gateway new inventory, and if I drill into the sources here I've just named as gateway new. That's because I've put a filter on here, so I'm filtering for this new gateway tag that I'm actually putting in there and tagging on the machines. The other things that I'm doing is I'm modifying the default behavior, and I'm pulling back setting the private DNS name and the private IP address for the destination variable. Instead of relying on public endpoints, I want to talk to those private endpoints, which means that my Tower instance is also running in AWS. So it's sitting there, it's local, it's reachable, and I'm talking to my machines on their local interface instead of some publicly exposed interface. Now at this point in time, I just got an update notification. So if I click here and I look at my hosts, these are the 2 new hosts that were just generated. And it's been updated. They've got my new gateway tag sitting on them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to approve the workflow to continue on moving forward. And at this point in time, the workflow is going to target these 2 instances that were just created, and it's going to install NGINX Plus on them. And then after it installs NGINX Plus, it'll install Controller Agent on them. And then I'll wait again for those to register with Controller. After that, I've got another step that removes that tag, so I don't accidentally do some type of lifecycle action against these instances thinking that they haven't been allocated to Controller yet. While we wait for that to happen, let's go ahead and look at the templates that do that. So installing NGINX Plus, it's not very complicated. In this case, my target machines are actually Ubuntu. So you're going to see some actions in here that are specific to that. I'm using Ansible Vault to protect my NGINX repository key and certificate file. So I need to decrypt that out, write it out so it can be used by the role. On the group for the new gateways that my cloud inventory had revealed for me, I'm going to load the variable file, and then I'm going to use the NGINX role from NGINX Controller. You're going to see a few different reference patterns here, so don't worry about it. There's a few different ways to do this. So NGINX Controller, NGINX, and I'm going to stop it. I'm going to set up log rotate because I've got a really small instance with really small disks, so I don't want my logs to fill up from my drive. Then I'm going to go ahead and remove that key and certificate to make sure I clean up after myself. But it's not complicated, it's not difficult. There's a variable file for setting up plus, so I'm enabling NGINX, I'm telling it to start, the version is plus, I want to delete the license from the instance that's placed in the repository, which will remove the repository after plus is installed, so good measure, so my keys aren't sitting out there on this publicly exposed machine. The license files that I'm passing through, and I want to enable the plus API, so that's what this is establishing, is the plus API, and that's setting me up for controller, because controller is going to use that plus API. And I'm actually adding the Node.js module in this particular case. So I mentioned my NGINX keys and repos, so those are encrypted in Vault, as you can see here. And then after it does the plus installation, it's going to go through and install agent. The agent installation uses my generate token role. And after it generates an ephemeral token for the API, it's going to come back and it's going to retrieve an API key that the agent's going to use for registration. So that executes on the Ansible host itself, and then we're going to switch context over to the gateway machines. So these are the remotes for gateway. We're going to sudo here, and we're going to install the minimal set of packages that we need for support of the agent at this point in time. And then we're going to go ahead and use the controller agent role to install the actual agent. And one of the things I'm going to feed back through here is the FQDN, or the local DNS name of the machine, so that we have that to give to the machine when it registers. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize that window. I see I've got my notification that we've progressed, so let's go ahead and take a look over here at controller and see what our machine instances ended up being. So underneath the infrastructure tab, I can see that I just added 2 new instances. I didn't show you this before, but trust me, these are new. So that's 112 and 114 are the instances that we just added. These are not attached to any configurations yet within controller. So let's come back over here to services, and I'm going to set us up for the next step. I'm going to take a look at the environments and the production US East. I want to get back here to show you that this is empty. It doesn't have any of the certificates attached to it or whatnot. You can think of an environment as kind of the first level way to establish a playground for some consumers within your organization. So it could be a particular dev team, it could be a particular operations team, it could be a specific set of users. This is their playground, these are the instances they can work with, these are the certificates they can work with, and then they can apply their applications and their component configurations here. So there's different ways to kind of slice and dice the system from that perspective. All right, if I come over here to EC2 before I go cleaning up, I've got some instances that are named this pattern that I showed. If we go ahead and look at the tags, I see the new gateway tag that's on this particular instance, so that's one of the ones that I just stood up. That's great. And if I look at this particular one, this one's missing that new gateway tag, so this is one that I set up previously, and it is a gateway, but it's not one of the new ones that I'm going to be working with through Ansible. So all right, so all that's good. We'll go ahead and approve, and that's actually going to reach out to AWS and remove that tag because everything is all set for us to move forward. Now, the configuration of our development environment and moving that over into the production environment for our trading application. So those particular configurations, that includes a certificate, which I'm storing in GitHub. That includes a gateway configuration, my ingress details. That configuration is stored over in GitHub for that component. My application configuration is also in GitHub, and my component configurations are all in GitHub. So that's my source of truth sitting over there in GitHub, and we're going to pull all those into Tower, in through Tower, and apply those to controller and those objects. Now, the certificates, for example, I also have set up so I can do an update to those certificates, it hits a webhook over in my Tower instance, which then automatically updates those over in Controller. So I can keep those in synchronization. I need to rotate a certificate. I just update it in GitHub. It calls out to the webhook and automatically updates those certificates over in Controller for me, and we just keep moving forward. It's just an incredible convenience for me. And then I've got my source of truth. I can bundle up all those configurations at any point in time, and it's like, this is what the system was on this day at this point in time. We know what it is. We can replay that in any way, shape, or form that we want to. All right, let's go back to our trading application here, and moving that on forward, we'll get this started so that we can take a look at some of those configurations while this is going. And this was production US East. Not EAT, but East. Our instance names were 112 and 114 because we just took a look over that. And the ingress URIs that I'm going to be using this are trading.acmefinancial.net. In our development environment, the ingress DNS or URI was slightly different because it was a development environment, so we didn't have to worry about it. It didn't have to tie to a certificate. We didn't care if it authenticated correctly. But we do here. We don't want that bad splat out there for the certificate when this goes into production. So, okay, we're going to click Next. We're going to launch, and we're going to let that job churn. Because what that's going to do is that's going to pull my certificate. It's going to pull my gateway configuration, my application, and my components. So let's go ahead and take a look at what some of those are. So we've got the instances. We want to take a look at the certificate. It's a really simple job that I'm running here. I just have the playbook right in the certificate store in this particular case. So we're going to use our controller collection again, and we're going to use the generate token role. And then we're going to read the variables, which is reading in the certificates and the keys. And then we're going to use the certificate role to actually update the certificate. The variable files here isn't complicated. It's the name, the display name, how we want that to show up in Controller. And then it's the certificate type. In this case, it's a PEM-based certificate. We're going to actually pull from this file and this key file, that certificate file, and then this certificate chain file. Remember, we don't want that bad splat that our certificate's broken. That's just bad news for the customer. Our collection reference is in here again like we had before in the other folder. Now, next step after that is to apply our gateway configuration. So, in this case, our gateway configuration, we've got a variable file, just like we did for the certificate, same type of pattern. And we've got our gateway configuration. So once again, the same collection, NGINX Controller. We're going to read in the variable file. We're going to generate the token, and then we're going to use the controller gateway role. So it's really quick and easy to just drop these roles in here as steps and to build out these workflows with a higher level execution playbook. After that, the application is going to come through. I've got a few more configuration items in here for this one. I've got a definition for the application itself. So trading.acmefinancial.net. I've got a file component. So trading.acmefinancial.net, that's our ingress side that's happening at our gateway. That's our incoming traffic from our customer. This component is servicing the files path. So DNS name, WAC files. And then we're going to apply that configuration to these gateways that we stood up before. And our backend workloads are sitting at these particular backend URIs for this particular component. Okay, that's one team. Built that, they pushed it out, that particular component. We've got a different team that comes in here with the main application. They're managing that a little different. So this is the root URI. Still, we're applying it to the same gateway that we established before. Remember, we're replicating. We just replicated all this from the development environment over to the production environment. So we're just carrying these forward. Our main app is our workload group, and our URI for our backend is here, but here we've got some cookie behavior that's configured in this particular one. Our referrals application, slightly different. Once again, it's pretty simple. In the front end it's WAC app 3. But on the back end, it's this particular of workloads. And our transfer component is there as well. It's the API pattern, and it's yet a different workload group and a different target on the back end. So you can see and sort out how you can do variable substitution through your pipeline and sort all those things out. The task for loading the app, it's really simple. Read the variable file, generate the token, apply it to the application. So they're nice and reusable and really easy because literally all you have to do out is change the variable file that you pass through the pipeline. This particular one, it just steps through the various components and plays them all out. So with all that, if I come back over to my controller instance, so now we've got an application over here in this production US East world where we didn't before. There was nothing here. We've got this certificate that's here and it's healthy. We've got the gateway and it's servicing 112 and 114 just like we told it to with the trading.acmefinancial.net URI. And if we go ahead and dive into the application, the same component configurations that I was looking at before, we have over here. So our transfer component, our referral component, our file component, and our main component. So we just progressed from one environment to the other using the collection, just pulled from samples. So this is all about getting folks started with moving NGINX Controller into what their pipeline does. So what did we just do? We just stood up new machines. We installed NGINX Plus on them. We linked them to controller with the controller agent. And then we started to go through and apply our configurations. So our ingress side behavior, created our application, put our certificate in there, and actually linked back to our components. Controller took care of generating the nginx.com file, making sure that certificate was in the right place and secured on the file system on those Nginx instances. Controller took care of that. And now we can lifecycle those components separate from the ingress side, for example. We can lifecycle that certificate separate from the other points in configuration. So as we need to update those things, we can continue to update those through pipelines. And I hope this was a useful, quick reference for you folks. There's a blog that basically covers everything that I just talked about, and there's going to be more as we continue to move forward. Thank you.